All Elite Wrestling, or AEW, launched at a very difficult time through no fault of their own. A global pandemic hit their growth. Shortly afterwards, Vince McMahon was retired by the WWE, with Triple H taking over and ushering in a new era of great quality wrestling in WWE as well. Meanwhile, New Japan and Impact Wrestling, soon to be rebranded once again as TNA, continues to up their game and start to creep in behind the number 2 spot. While AEW has had huge success and is responsible for some great moments in the history of wrestling, the amount of doom and gloom about them right now is very telling as to what they're doing in the general wrestling world. There is a level of tribalism between WWE versus AEW, but there's a simpler question right now, and that's, will AEW survive much longer? Ratings are down, merch sale revenue is down, and wrestlers don't seem to want to go there as much as they once did. But does this mean the end? Meanwhile, we're seeing Dave Meltzer reporting that Warner Bros. Discovery, the actual provider of the TV deal for AEW that they rely on for their income, is considering dropping them entirely and making a deal with WWE instead. The initial TV deal from Warner Bros. To AEW was for $175 million over the course of 4 years. This is about to expire and a new TV deal will need to be made in order to make this a long-term viable project. The problem is, while Tony Khan is telling us that we could get up to $1 billion new TV deal, we're also being told actively by some serious experts in the field that 1, AEW has been profitable for a long time, and 2, AEW has never been profitable. Let's examine that in more detail, because I'm going to be really blunt from the off. AEW has never been profitable. Our first source is WrestleNomics, hosted by Brandon Thurston, the source when it comes to anything financial in wrestling. This man is the definition of stat whore, just like me, and I love him for it. Brandon Thurston said, in regards to a quote from Tony Khan, "The takeaway from me here is that this implies AEW has not been profitable yet, even though the Wrestling Observer newsletter has said that they became profitable after they made their January 2020 deal, where they renewed their deal with Warner Media at a higher rate." This tells us 2 things. 1, Dave Meltzer and the numbers are not saying the same thing. And 2, AEW desperately relies on the amount of income generated from these TV deals to survive. So AEW has not been profitable on an annual basis anyway. There's different ways you can cut up time, but on an annual basis they've not been profitable apparently. That's takeaway number 1. Secondly, and this is regards the money that was invested into the AEW Fight Forever game, which by all accounts flopped. 8 figures is a lot of figures. That's somewhere between $10 million and $99 million. Who knows how much money they're really investing? A lot, though, more than $10 million. If we go by the website VG Insights, which gives stats into individual video games, the quick stats are very, very telling. 13 active players updated as of 68 minutes ago. 64% positive reviews is good, but this gross revenue is your biggest issue. $1.6 million from a game that invested more than at least $10 million and less than $99 million to actually get it off the ground. I feel that's a pretty definitive flop at this point. I don't know if the game costs simply spiraled out of control or if AEW overestimated their influence, but what I will say is that unfortunately, unless they're planning to release a game every single year in the WWE 2K mold, they will not be recouping their investment for this. Thurston estimated AEW generated about $64 million in revenue in 2020. To be clear, that's revenue, not profit. That's just money in before you count any of your operating costs. The majority of that money, he believes, comes from US broadcast partner Warner Media, which owns Turner Networks, TNT and TBS. Another challenge for profitability is the expense of producing television programs like Dynamite on a weekly basis. Each taping costs the company more than $500,000 before paying talent. Let's break this down a little bit. So if I do the quick math on that one, the $175 million in broadcast revenue per year breaks down to $43.75 million per year. If we take that $500,000 operating cost, which is an estimate, and we times that by 52 weeks per year for the cost of Dynamite, that takes us to $26 million. If they made $64 million in revenue in 2020, you can take that $26 million away, which would have been the cost of Dynamite, and that's $38 million. Once you then take that $43.75 million into account, you actually end up with a very, very small gain, which is wiped out by the cost of paying just Jon Moxley. We're left with $5.75 million. The cost of a Jon Moxley is $6 million. Then there's a Chris Jericho, who's reportedly on $3 million, and then you see how the numbers start to stack up. Now, this is not a hard and fast science, just to be clear, as is mentioned by Thurston. They say AEW likely saved on costs by consolidating tapings and airing non-live episodes of Dynamite this and last year during the pandemic. In addition, this is revenue during a pandemic. That $64 million is without the amount of ticket sales as required as well. So while they definitely struggled heavily during the pandemic, surely they have picked up since, right? AEW is not a publicly traded company. As such, financial reports that exist for the likes of WWE are not available on AEW. It's not immediately apparent what they've made and what they've lost, but there are clear indicators of things starting to go wrong. We go to the Wrestling Observer here, which state AEW, Warner Bros. Discovery to announce new TV rights deals next Wednesday. The deal will be revealed on Warner Bros. Discovery's upfront event. This was on May 10th, 2023. To be clear, this has not happened. A new TV rights deal between AEW and Warner Bros. Discovery will be announced as part of the latter's upfront next Wednesday in New York City. The news comes from our Dave Meltzer. Meltzer said both the deal and the much-discussed AEW Collision show will be announced at the Wednesday, May 17th event. Collision was announced. This did come with a TV rights deal for Collision on the Saturday. However, a new TV rights deal was not formally announced, more a TV show and an extended income that came with it. No actual extension to the current active TV rights deal was mentioned. Forbes tells us more about Collision, but nothing about how much money they're actually being paid. In fact, Tony Khan has been incredibly hesitant to report the figure. AEW has officially announced a third television show is second to air on TNT with one of the worst kept secrets in wrestling, AEW Collision. We're doubling down on wrestling with AEW Collision, which gives fans 2 more hours every week, said top WBD executive Jason Solanas in a press release. AEW's roster of talent has expanded so quickly, we felt it needed another night to bring our audience the epic rivalries, unforgettable matches, and stars they love to watch. Once again, nothing in here about how much money there would be, but plenty about the return of CM Punk. The Collision deal hinged on CM Punk. Many reports back that up. In fact, Warner Bros. Discovery themselves have been very open about the fact Collision was there to be a platform for a wrestler that is no longer with the company after being fired in September. So we have a combination of low income and revenue when it comes to the pandemic. Coming out of that, they announced a new deal, a supposed new TV deal that wasn't, but did not say how much it was for, and it was hinging on someone who no longer wrestles there. Circumstantial so far, let's go further. We're going to the New York Post. Tony Khan teases very lucrative milestone for AEW in 2024. This was published on November 30th, and this is very Tony Khan. The company president is looking to replicate the success of AEW All In at Wembley Stadium in London as tickets go on sale Friday and secure a very lucrative media rights deal with AEW's coming due. It's coming due very soon, and nothing has been announced yet. But this article is a perfect microcosm of Tony Khan himself. Let's go into detail. We're talking about the success of AEW All In. They actually state it here. AEW sold 81,035 tickets and saw an attendance of 72,263, meaning nearly 10,000 of those tickets sold were not used. He says, I want to go back and build and have that tradition of doing the biggest stadium show of the year in Europe, having people from all over the world travel to London for that show. This is very much Khan in microcosm. Promising the world, delivering strong, but never quite delivering what is actually said is happening. And this is an issue, unfortunately, with wrestling in general. It's a marketing ploy, and it's a clever one. AEW have always been a fantastic marketing company. They know that sometimes just to get people through the door, you just promise them that you've already got everyone through the door. It's a trick that WWE use as well. Khan is also infamous for, as regards marketing, the major announcement gimmick. If ratings start to flag, we see year on year, month on month, week on week, Tony Khan will suddenly have a major announcement to make. And he has himself been very open about the fact that quite often he announces a major announcement with no idea what that announcement is going to be, just because he knows it will pop a rating. Media rights, however, are the most important piece of business a wrestling company can do. This is proven. Its rights were extended in January 2020 on a 4-year deal, approximately $175 million contract that included the addition of Rampage for Friday night, according to the Wrestling Observer. With this in mind, something hasn't been announced yet, and it's less than a month until the deal expires. We are less than a month away from them having absolutely no home to go to. And yet, right now, the rumours are that Warner Bros. Discovery is more focused on negotiating a deal with WWE. There's every possibility that WWE are simply taking as long as they can on this deal, just so that AEW goes off the air. Khan sounded optimistic about what's on the horizon. A huge milestone for us will be in 2024. We will have our media rights agreements domestically put in place, and we have all these great relationships all over the world. The very lucrative US media rights will be settled in 2024, and that's very exciting for us. And just like that, there's a massive glimmer of hope. Because if the deals are actually going to be extended in 2024, what that essentially means is a new deal won't have to be signed in 2023. So even if they go past that 4-year limit, they will still be on Warner Bros. Programming. That's a huge positive and could, long term, result in a similar handshake deal to how Tony Khan had with Jon Moxley. In fact, there are more positive signs than just that. Josh Coulson of Sportster reporting AEW rumoured to be nearing a new $1 billion TV deal with Warner Bros. That would be a more than 5 times increase for programming which has gone down heavily in the ratings since that 4-year deal began and would represent an enormous success in terms of business. There is, however, one major problem with this rumour. See if you can spot it. There's been a lot of talk about potential TV deals in the wrestling business lately. It seems AEW's TV deals are for grabs this year, and it may be on the cusp of signing an almost unbelievable new contract. If those rumours are true, AEW is about to land an absolutely mammoth television deal. Apparently, the promotion is about to put pen to paper on a 5-year deal worth $1 billion. If true, the new contract will run for 5 years, and all AEW programming will be exclusive to Warner Bros. Discovery and its various networks. There's a tweet from an account called Drain Bamager. If this deal is indeed about to be signed and made official, it would further explain why Dark and Dark Elevation has been scrapped. Take all of the above with a grain of salt for now, as not only has it not been confirmed by AEW or Warner Bros. Discovery, but the rumours appear to have stemmed from the Wrestling Observer board. Comment below if you spotted the lack of source in paragraph after paragraph after paragraph there, because ultimately it came from a Wrestling Observer forum, which doesn't even mean it came from Dave Meltzer. It came from the forum. The bigger issue for me is the date. Published May 10th, 2023. More than 6 months later, nothing has happened. Clearly, this was an incorrect report. Tony Khan, however, apparently remains ebullient. We go to House of Wrestling now, a source that has usually been everything CM Punk, but has also been plenty about AEW. The pro wrestling world got thrown a curveball this week when it was announced that WWE NXT has signed a new 5-year TV deal with the CW. The news surprised many due to House of Wrestling's report that Billy Corgan and the NWA had signed a pair of TV deals with the Top 20 network. Notice all of the backlinking to their own stuff. House of Wrestling has learned that a high-level CW executive approached Khan at the LA Forum in June 2022 about bringing Ring of Honor content to the network. We are unsure if this was before talks between the CW and the NWA or WWE NXT were underway. From what we understand, Khan did not pursue talks with the CW as he refuses to seriously entertain new deals for Ring of Honor until AEW TV rights are in play, which will be in 2024. Khan feels that by waiting, he will have more options and leverage in the marketplace. It was noted that Khan found the CW executive to be very pleasant and someone he enjoyed visiting with, but it was just not the right time to make a deal. Which, seriously, isn't that just explaining who your source is? You are telling people what Tony Khan thought of a meeting between him and one CW executive. Giving the game away a bit there, mate. The telling parts of this report for me are quite simple. Tony Khan isn't panicking. If he was, he'd be very interested in getting as much money as he possibly could for Ring of Honor, which is not currently part of a TV deal, or at least a serious one that will make it legitimate money. Ring of Honor is in every way a drain on the funding of AEW. Secondly, House of Wrestling, with a source clearly very close to Tony Khan, states that the TV rights deal is up in 2024, meaning that negotiations will not be actively taking place and a new deal cannot be signed until 2024. Second point to make on that one, we're not in 2024 yet, at least at time of recording this. I think it's fair to say a lot of that AEW panic is starting to drain away, and the possibility that it's going to crash into a wall and disappear entirely feels a lot less immediate. We go to Cultaholic now, presenting more information as to those rumours from the Wrestling Observer Forum about a $1 billion TV deal. Let's break it down a little bit. Rumours had suggested AEW's TV deal will be worth $1 billion, but estimates don't appear to have been high enough. According to Wade Keller of PW Torch, AEW's new deal with Warner Bros. Discovery is expected to be worth approximately $240 million per year over 5 years, bringing the total sum to $1.2 billion. On average, the deal will bring in $4.6 million per week for All Elite Wrestling. Along with Collision, Keller noted the expectation is a content agreement between AEW and the Max streaming service will be announced. Speculation has suggested that AEW All In could air on Max in the United States to avoid the promotion running 2 pay-per-views in 7 days. This unfortunately did not happen. This again suggests that while AEW are not actively making money at the moment, things are set to swing in their direction. If this is the case for a new TV deal, it is a massive increase. We are talking about $200 million extra, or a 6 times increase in the per year investment in AEW programming. If Tony Khan is able to swing that, it guarantees the success of the company, the success of the wrestlers, and the success of everyone involved with AEW for decades to come. That will literally set them up on a par with WWE. All of these reports came before CM Punk was fired, and this seems to have been a major turning point for Warner Bros. Discovery. Back to House of Wrestling. AEW Collision's success reportedly key to TV rights talk. This is from June 16th, and it states where they were at the time. All Elite Wrestling's second flagship show will feature CM Punk as the central focus, with several other notable names making their return to the company like Thunder Rosa, Miro, and Andrade El Idolo. Now CM Punk is gone. Thunder Rosa only returned this week, and Andrade seems to be making it pretty clear that he'd rather not be there. On the AEW Double or Nothing media call, Tony Khan confirmed that the Collision deal with Warner Bros. Discovery has been added as part of their current TV rights deal, not a new one. The Wrestling Observer newsletter is reporting that Collision's success will be key for the young company when it comes time to begin negotiations. So they didn't get any extra money. And in many ways, Collision has to prove successful in order to get this $1.2 billion deal that's being mentioned by Dave Meltzer and Wade Keller. Let's see how Collision did. This is via itnwwe.com, and it gives us all of the information as regards to ratings for AEW Collision. We started on June 17th with 816,000 people, and then it immediately dropped by 221,000. Let's go a little further, see how it's developed. We had some peaks, July 29th, 739,000, and some troughs, September 2nd, 345,000. Looking at its most recent shows, it seems to be recovering. November 17th is the worst that they've had, 270,000, but is increased by December 9th to 455,000, a much more creditable figure. What we can say is while that is a more creditable figure than the drop below, it did mean that we went from 816,000 to about 450,000 for regular programming. If you want to talk AEW Collision being a success and that being important to the TV rights deal, do you think they're going to get $1.2 billion for a show primarily that has halved in ratings? This, however, is where having it added to the current TV deal is a benefit, because it's not just about Collision, it's also about Dynamite and Rampage. Let's ignore Rampage for the moment because we know that is essentially the B show, as it were. Let's focus on the actual flagship, the number one show for AEW, Dynamite. Using the same website and starting in January 2020, Dynamite received 967,000 viewers at that time. There are many peaks and troughs as regards it, but there are roughly similar numbers in the weeks preceding. Let's see where we are by the end of it. If we zip up to the current day, 2023, the rating was 845,000. That is a drop, but it is not a sizable drop. Meaning that while they were happy to add an additional show for the success of Dynamite, Dynamite can still be realistically considered a success for the network, and may be enough to make them give a similar deal. The question, though, is whether or not it's enough to go from 175 million over 4 years to 1.2 billion over 5. Overall viewership is still good for Dynamite, Collision not so much, and CM Punk has gone from the company. Gone to Cody Rhodes, a founder of the company. Gone to Jade Cargill, Kenny Omega out indefinitely. There are signs to be positive of, but there are also signs that are meant to worry you. This takes us up to present day. Jim Parsons for the Sportster. AEW in danger of losing TV rights deal with Warner Bros. Discovery and slot on TNT and TBS. This was published 2 days ago. Note the very first word of that subheadline: speculation. In a recent report by Nick Hausman, a concerning vibe looms over Tony Khan and AEW, suggesting the company may be at risk of not having their contract renewed by Warner Bros. Discovery on TBS or TNT. This is a pivotal development as Warner Bros. Discovery owns both networks, currently broadcasting AEW programming. Moreover, with talks that closed conversations between Warner Bros. And WWE have now reopened, if WWE were to strike a deal, it could potentially force AEW to seek a new home after their existing TV deal expires next year. While this is reporting on a quote-unquote vibe, when I have immense questions on that, we do have to consider a simple possibility. Warner Bros. Discovery wanted Punk. WWE now has Punk. In many ways, bringing in CM Punk might not even have any impact on the wrestling. WWE might not even care about what CM Punk does next. They have a TV deal coming up, and they're in a good position to strike and potentially get that $1.2 billion that was on offer. They have higher ratings, they have the stars in question, and they also have a global brand wider reaching than AEW. Is all this reason for doom and gloom? No. If AEW was of interest enough to be of offer for a $1.2 billion deal from Warner Bros. Discovery, they'll be of interest enough to others, and their ratings are still doing decent numbers. They are a solid number 2, but I do feel we need to change our opinion a little bit as regards the idea of AEW ever actually physically competing with WWE. They did the best they could, they came extremely close, but WWE have put them firmly into the rearview mirror. AEW continues to provide quality programming, and if you are a fan, you will know why. There is plenty of great wrestling, and I was there at Wembley for All In. We also need to be realistic. AEW do need a strong new TV deal in order to become profitable. AEW have never been profitable. If they do not get a TV deal worth at least twice what they currently have, their only option will be to start firing wrestlers because their roster is simply too big to actually cover the costs of what they are trying to achieve. AEW may be forced to become more like WWE in order to have a chance of seriously challenging WWE. Comment below what you see as the biggest risks when it comes to AEW, or whether you believe there's any chance they will be going out of business. In the meantime, check out more WTF Wrestling on this channel. Check out the playlist for more details. I've been Tom Colohue, and goodbye.